Under the bright spring sun of 2004, DR, Jin-woo Kim packed the last of his belongings in his small Seoul apartment. At 29, he was significantly older than most Korean men beginning their mandatory military service. While many sought exemptions or easier postings, Jin-woo had chosen to fulfill his duty properly, despite having already completed medical school. "You're making this harder than it needs to be," his friends had told him. "With your medical background, you could get assigned to a hospital in Seoul." But Jin-woo felt differently. "If I'm going to be a doctor, I need to start by honoring my commitments," he'd replied. His parents hadn't hidden their concern when he announced his decision, but they respected his choice. Their son had always been determined, working his way through medical school, despite financial challenges. The next morning, Jin-woo boarded the bus to the training center, his expression tense as he joined the other recruits. Most were barely out of high school, making him stand out immediately. When the drill sergeant's booming voice ordered them to attention, Jin-woo straightened his back and prepared himself for what lay ahead. Basic training proved challenging. The physical demands tested his limits, but Jin-woo discovered a resilience he hadn't known he possessed. His medical knowledge earned him respect when treating minor injuries among his fellow recruits, and he found himself forming unexpected bonds with the younger men. After completing basic training, Jin-woo was assigned to a medical unit where his academic knowledge finally found practical application. During medical drills, his understanding of anatomy and emergency procedures stood out, earning recognition from his superiors. "If you joined earlier, you could have been commissioned as a medical officer," one of his commanders remarked. Jin-woo simply nodded. "I'm content serving where I'm needed. There will be time for a medical career afterward." One day, an announcement circulated through the barracks. Volunteers were being sought for a peacekeeping mission in Iraq. The deployment of Korean troops to support coalition forces had been controversial in the news, with debate raging about the risks versus the humanitarian benefits. Jin-woo felt drawn to the opportunity. Despite the danger, his medical skills might make a genuine difference there. After careful consideration, he submitted his application. A week later, he received notification of his selection. His parents were distraught, pleading with him to reconsider. But Jin-woo had made his decision. "If not now, then when?" he wrote in his journal. "The world is dangerous, but if I can help, I want to try." The day he boarded the military transport to Iraq, reality finally hit him. This wasn't a training exercise. He was heading to an active combat zone. As the plane lifted off, Jin-woo closed his eyes, wondering what awaited him in the desert. Life at the multinational base in Iraq was more intense than Jin-woo had imagined. The scorching desert heat, constant vigilance against potential attacks, and the challenge of providing medical support to both soldiers and local civilians kept him perpetually busy and alert. Despite being classified as a peacekeeping mission, the threat of violence remained ever present. One afternoon, Jin-woo learned from a translator that an American medical support team would be joining their base. Though cooperation between Korean and American forces was common, this news sparked his interest, particularly since his English medical vocabulary exceeded his conversational skills. Several days later, the American team arrived at the base. Among the dust-covered soldiers climbing out of transport vehicles, one figure immediately caught Jin-woo's attention. She was a lieutenant with the U.S. Army Medical Corps, with short brown hair and alert eyes. Unlike many of the hardened soldiers, her face had a surprisingly approachable quality. "Hello, I'm Lieutenant Rebecca Evans," she said when they were introduced, extending her hand. "Nice to meet you," Jin-woo replied awkwardly in English. "I'm Jin-woo Kim, Korean Medical Corps." They both smiled at their stilted introduction. Despite the language barrier, Jin-woo sensed they would be working together frequently. In the following weeks, they were paired for various medical support missions, treating both military personnel and local civilians. Rebecca explained that she had received medical training through the Army after completing her undergraduate studies. Like Jean Wu, she was in her 20s and passionate about medicine, driven by a mission to save lives in this complicated war zone. They began exchanging language lessons during their limited free time. Rebecca would correct Jean Wu's English pronunciation while he taught her basic medical terms in Korean. These small study sessions gradually brought them closer. After a particularly exhausting day providing medical aid in 110-degree heat, they were returning to base in a military vehicle. Both were drained from the intensity of their work. "Is it always this difficult?" Jean Wu asked quietly. Rebecca opened her eyes, fatigue evident in her face. "Yes, it's difficult, but this is my job, and people need us, even here." Her words resonated with Jean Wu, who had chosen medicine for similar reasons. "You're remarkable," he said without thinking. "What?" she asked, turning toward him. Clearing his throat, Jean Wu clarified in careful English, "I just meant, your attitude is admirable." Rebecca's mouth curved into a small smile. As weeks passed, they spent more time together, working side by side, sharing meals, and gradually improving their communication. They discovered numerous similarities. Both were medical professionals early in their careers, both had chosen military service out of a sense of duty, and both were fighting loneliness in this harsh environment. One evening, they sat together under the starry desert sky, each holding a single beer, a small indulgence after a difficult day. Military regulations limited alcohol consumption, but occasional decompression was necessary. "Even in this controlled chaos, I feel a kind of freedom," Rebecca admitted. Jean Wu nodded. "I understand. I'm learning things here I never could in a classroom." A comfortable silence fell between them, during which both became increasingly aware of their deepening connection. Yet their circumstances couldn't have been more complicated. Different nationalities, different military ranks, and regulations strictly forbidding romantic relationships between officers and enlisted personnel. Not to mention, they were in an active war zone. Both recognized their growing feelings, but knew they had to remain hidden. Still, there were unmistakable signs. Accidental brushes of hands, quickened heartbeats when their eyes met, and an increasing awareness of each other's presence. Their careful dance of unspoken feelings continued until one morning when an explosion rocked the base. Sand and black smoke filled the air as screams erupted from all directions. Reports came in that a vehicle-borne improvised explosive device had detonated near the base entrance, injuring 2 guards. The medical team rushed to respond. Jean Wu and Rebecca ran to the scene to find the injured soldiers bleeding profusely, their expressions panicked. Rebecca immediately took charge, shouting orders as she began emergency treatment. Jean Wu worked alongside her, checking wounds and applying pressure to stop bleeding. The theoretical knowledge from medical school was vastly different from treating actual blast injuries in the field. His ears rang from the explosion's aftermath, and images from training exercises flashed through his mind. For a moment, the situation overwhelmed him, but a sense of duty kept him focused on the task at hand. Rebecca continued working despite the challenging conditions, administering oxygen and preparing for fluids. She directed disoriented soldiers and worked with steady hands. Though both injured guards were in critical condition, immediate treatment saved their lives. After the wounded were evacuated by helicopter, Jean Wu and Rebecca stood beside the now destroyed checkpoint. They swallowed hard, looking at each other with a mix of relief, trauma, and something deeper. "Are you okay?" Jean Wu asked, his voice shaking. Rebecca nodded, her chest still heaving with adrenaline. "I'm fine. You. In that moment, as they confirmed each other's safety, their eyes conveyed emotions words couldn't express. That evening, with the base still on high alert, Jinwoo spotted Rebecca leaving the medical tent. He approached her cautiously. "Thank you for everything today," he said. "I was scared, but having you there helped me keep going." Rebecca looked at him with an unreadable expression before smiling slightly. "Because you were there, I was okay too. Honestly, if I had been alone, I might have fallen apart." In the aftermath of danger, they acknowledged what had been building between them. They had run toward danger together, faced fear together, and survived together. Unable to contain her feelings any longer, Rebecca spoke first. "I like you," she said softly in English. Jinwoo's eyes widened, and he gently took her hand. "I like you too," he replied, and they moved closer to each other. Love in a war zone carried a desperate urgency. The awareness that tomorrow wasn't guaranteed made their feelings more intense. Yet they remained cautious, exchanging affections in secret, away from military discipline and superior officers. During brief moments alone, they would hold hands behind the medical tent or whisper about the future. "What happens after deployment?" Jinwoo asked. "I don't know," Rebecca answered honestly, "but I know I won't forget you." Both realized how important they had become to each other. Though their deployment wasn't long, they had grown incredibly close. With the constant threat of violence, they cherished each moment together. As sunset painted the desert red, they would watch the horizon together, sharing brief conversations. Sometimes they engaged with the local culture, interacting with Iraqi civilians during medical outreach. When they saw children's innocent faces during these missions, they recognized that even amid war's tragedy, hope could flourish. Before they knew it, their deployments were ending. Jinwoo was scheduled for rotation back to Korea, and Rebecca's tour was concluding as well. "Thank you for everything," Rebecca said tearfully as their separation approached. "I've learned so much and made memories I'll never forget." Jinwoo's expression grew serious. "Someday I'll complete my medical degree, and I'll see you again. I promise." The night before Jinwoo's departure, they sat together on a bench, having their final conversation. "Can we stay in touch?" he asked. "Of course," she replied. "The world isn't that big." Yet they both knew the significant distance between them. Once they returned to their respective countries and civilian lives, would they ever truly meet again? After returning to Korea, Jinwoo readjusted to civilian life and resumed his medical studies. His experiences in Iraq had profoundly changed his perspective and values. Most significantly, Rebecca remained constantly in his thoughts, their time together amid war's fear, their medical collaboration, and their forbidden romance sometimes felt like a dream. Yet their daily emails and messages kept the memory vivid. Rebecca was busy with her duties at an American military base after her return. Still, in the evenings, she would check the time difference with Korea and send Jinwoo messages. "How was your day? How are your studies going?" Jinwoo would reply with photos of Seoul's skyline, his university library, or gatherings with friends. Rebecca felt that despite the distance, their hearts remained connected through these everyday exchanges. Then one day, as Jinwoo finished his morning classes and headed to lunch, his phone rang. Seeing an American number, he answered excitedly. "Jinwoo," Rebecca's voice sounded tense. "I'm coming to Korea." Stunned, he stood up from his seat. "Really? When?" "Soon. As soon as possible. And I need to tell you something in person." A week later, Jinwoo waited nervously at the airport, his heart pounding. This would be their first meeting since parting in the Iraqi desert. Would it be awkward? He both dreaded and desperately anticipated seeing her again. Finally, Rebecca emerged from the arrival hall, pulling her luggage. The moment their eyes met, they ran toward each other and embraced tightly. The airport's noise seemed to fade away as they held each other. Later, driving from the airport, Rebecca spoke quietly. "There's a reason I came so suddenly." Her hands trembled slightly. "I've been worried about how to tell you this, but I'm pregnant." Jean Wu felt as if he'd stopped breathing. "Pregnant with my child." The words seemed unbelievable. For several seconds, he couldn't speak. Memories of their secret moments together in Iraq flooded back. "Are you sure?" he finally managed. Rebecca nodded. "As a medical professional, you know the tests are clear." The car fell silent as Jean Wu processed the news, feeling a mixture of shock, joy, responsibility, and fear. "I know this might feel like a burden," Rebecca continued, quietly, "but I want to have this baby, and if possible, I want to be with you." Jean Wu's eyes moistened. His heart raced, not just as a medical professional, but as a man who might become a father. "Will you marry me?" he asked, surprising even himself. With tears in her eyes, Rebecca smiled. "I've been waiting to hear those words." They registered their marriage in Korea and held a small wedding ceremony. People were surprised by their sudden union. A Korean doctor marrying an American military officer he'd met during deployment raised eyebrows. But language and distance were no longer obstacles. Having relied on each other in a dangerous war zone, they were confident they could overcome any challenge. Rebecca completed the necessary paperwork to settle in Korea and met Jean Wu's parents. Though cultural differences initially created awkward moments, both families made efforts to welcome the new member. Jean Wu studied harder than ever at medical school. Meanwhile, he visited pregnant Rebecca, who was living in a small apartment near his university. Seeing their ultrasound images, he felt the reality of their child's existence. When their son was finally born, they named him Alexander, with the Korean name Minjun. Rebecca recovered well, and the baby thrived. Jean Wu passed his graduation exams and national medical license tests, helping care for their child during his rare free time between hospital rotations. A few years later, they welcomed a daughter, naming her Sophia with the Korean name Somin. Whenever Jean Wu saw Rebecca holding their young daughter, he was reminded of their medical missions in the Iraqi desert. "We met in the Middle East, and now we're raising a family in Korea," he would marvel. After gaining experience in hospital settings, the couple opened their own medical clinic in Korea, combining Jean Wu's interest in internal and family medicine with Rebecca's emergency medicine background. On their clinic's opening day, they smiled at each other and said, "This is just the beginning." They named their practice Peace and Hope Clinic, drawing on their deployment experiences and their shared desire to be healthcare providers who brought healing rather than the violence they had witnessed. The clinic gradually gained recognition in the local community. Meanwhile, Alexander and Sophia attended local schools and naturally became bilingual. The couple often remarked with wonder at their children's effortless switching between Korean and English. "We met in a desert where we could barely communicate, and now we're raising children who speak both our languages." Rebecca would say, "Maybe not a miracle, but definitely a testament to what love can create." The children became curious about their parents' story, asking questions like, "Did you meet in a place with war, Mom and Dad?" When this happened, the couple would explain the horrors of war and the importance of peace with serious expressions. One quiet afternoon in their clinic, Rebecca was sterilizing equipment with a nurse when a young couple entered with a crying baby. They explained that the infant had been crying inconsolably, preventing them from sleeping. After a brief examination, Rebecca diagnosed colic and prescribed appropriate medication, reassuring the worried parents. "Based on my observation, this should help, but if any unusual symptoms appear, please contact us immediately." The family thanked her profusely before leaving. As they departed, Rebecca remembered her own early days of motherhood and thought, without the help of those around me and my husband's support, I couldn't have managed so easily after returning from Iraq and adjusting to life in Korea with a baby. Later that night, after closing the clinic, the couple ate dinner at a nearby restaurant. "You worked hard today," Jean Woo said. Rebecca smiled gently. "So did you. But seeing that young couple today reminded me of our early days, me pregnant and coming to Korea, you busy with medical school." They both laughed at the memory. "Without those difficult times, we wouldn't have what we have now," Jean Woo observed. Returning home, they found their children already asleep. Rebecca kissed each child's forehead, while Jean Woo gently stroked their hair before heading to his study to prepare for the next day's cases. Their days were busy but fulfilling. Sometimes, looking at the city lights outside their window, Jean Woo would experience a moment of déjà vu, the Iraqi sky somehow overlapping with the present. They never took their peaceful daily life for granted, knowing through what dangers and uncertainties this tranquility had been forged. "Should we return to Iraq someday?" Jean Woo sometimes asked. "I'd like to take the children when they're older," Rebecca would reply. They believed that someday they would stand again on the land where they first met, where they had made promises to each other under dangerous skies. Their love, born in a dangerous foreign land through mutual reliance and calm handling of emergencies, continued to thrive. The evidence of that love was visible in their two children growing with bright smiles and in the hope in life that blossomed daily in their clinic. As the children grew older, they began developing their own talents and dreams. Alexander showed interest in biology and prepared to enter a science-focused high school, while Sophia pursued dance and aimed for an arts high school. The couple supported their children's genuine interests, believing that respecting each other's paths was the most important value for a family formed by people from different worlds. One evening during family dinner, Sophia suddenly asked, "Mom, Dad, what do you hope we'll do when we grow up?" Hearing this, the couple looked at each other and smiled. Rebecca answered first, "I want us to travel back to Iraq someday and to America and explore more of Korea's mountains and valleys. I want to live by helping more people through healing." Jean Woo added, "Yes, I want to continue caring for patients as a doctor and spend time with my family. That's my greatest wish." As a warm atmosphere spread across the dinner table, the children listened intently to their parents. Their life had long since settled into ordinary rhythms, yet this family continued safely on their path and would continue forward. Though theirs was an unusual beginning, a relationship formed during deployment, it had ultimately taken root in daily life and blossomed into something beautiful. And the story continued to grow, spreading into a wider world. The couple expressed their gratitude to each other. "Everything was possible because you were there. Everything was possible because we were together." And the blue sky over the Iraqi desert seemed to watch over them even today, an unforgettable connection, an unforgettable love, and an eternal journey toward peace and hope.